Chapter 51 On the Sabotage of Dreams. Goddard wasn't quite sure what he was seeing when Quailing came into view, shining white towers along the rim of a looped archipelago. His first thought was that this was a new Endura. Perhaps it had been built by a secret couple of sites ready to rip control out from under him. But as he got closer, he realized that these spires weren't buildings at all. He began to flush with fury as it dawned on him what these structures were and how they had come to be. First came Anastasia's accusations, then Alighieri's pointing finger, then condemnation not just by his enemies, but more and more by those who had claimed to be his allies. And now the Thunderhead itself had risen up against him. That's what this was. A slap in the face by the Thunderhead. How dare it? Goddard had dedicated his life to keeping the Sidon secure, and the Thunderhead, secretly conspiring with the likes of Anastasia and et al., had built these ships in defiance of him. If they launched, Goddard knew it would signal to the world his undoing. No! This could not be tolerated. Wherever these ships were bound, they must never be allowed to leave.
Attention! If you're not aboard a ship or on the gantry of one, you must clear the launch stones immediately or you will be incinerated. Repeat, you will be incinerated. Do not return to your homes. Seek refuge to the west of the resort on Evadon, or get on a boat and head out to sea.
Faraday and Moneta remained in the bunker where they would wait out the launch. There was no way to know what was going on outside now. They heard the alarm, they heard Loriana's announcements, then Psychoras. Sidra and Rowan had hurried off to learn the severity of the situation and hadn't come back. Faraday hadn't even said a proper goodbye to them. He supposed no amount of goodbyes would be enough. Then, as the ships began to shut their hatches, Faraday sealed the bunker, closed the inner seal door, and sat down with Moneta, waiting for the telltale rumble up above as the ships launched.
"It will be fine," Moneta told him. "The ships will launch and the world will be reminded of what still could be."
But Faraday shook his head. "It will never be. Even if these ships escape, they will be the only ones that ever do. Goddard will make sure of that."
"He'll be taken down," Moneta insisted. "You will take him down. I'll help you."
"But don't you see? There will always be another Goddard." Faraday looked outside Da Vinci's brutal pages. Da Vinci had torn them out of his journal and hidden them here so no one would know the truth. That the founding sites, the shining paragons of all Faraday hailed to, had murdered one another. "What is it about us, Moneta?" Faraday said. "What is it that drives us to seek such lofty goals, and yet tear out the foundations? Why must we always sabotage the pursuit of our own dreams?"
"We're imperfect beings," Moneta said. "How could we ever fit in a perfect world?"
"Are those spacecraft?"
asked Mendoza. Goddard ignored him.
"Take us closer,"
Goddard told the pilot, then tried to raise the 4 other planes on the radio, but could not. For the past half hour, Static had been whining over the speaker, and the plane's telemetry was fluctuating quietly. The Blade Guard pilot, who was only there as a donzel accessory, actually had to take over manual control. Sithrand moved in behind Goddard.
"Keep your eye on the prize, Robert," she said. "You're here for Anastasia."
Then he spun on her, furious.
"Don't presume to tell me my purpose here. I will do what needs to be done without your pointless counsel."
"Pointless?"
she said, her voice low, like a Wolverine girl.
"I'm the only thing that stands between you and your enemies. But really, you only have one. That angry boy. What was his name? Carson Lusk."
He could have lashed out then. He could have struck her down for that, but he held back with his last ounce of restraint.
"Never speak that name again,"
he warned her. She opened her mouth as if to have the last word, but closed it again, wisely. And then, as if the feast before them wasn't offensive enough, the pilot offered Goddard more bad news.
"Your Excellency, Highblade Peak's first plane has broken formation, so has Highblade Hammerstein's."
"What do you mean, broken formation?"
Goddard demanded. The pilot hesitated, afraid to draw Goddard's wrath.
They've turned around, he said. They're retreating.
And in a moment, Underside's Franklin's and Nietzsche's planes had left them as well, turning tail and running away, frightened off by the prospect of taking on this spacecraft and the Thunderhead.
Let them go,
Rand said.
let all of them go. Let these damn ships launch, and they won't be our problem anymore.
I heartily agree,
Mendoza said, as if anything the Tony said mattered. Goddard ignored them both. East and West America were abandoning him? Two of his own undersides as well? Fine, they would be dealt with later. But right now, there were bigger fish to fry. Until now, the bulbous weapons hanging beneath the wings were merely for show, a warning for those who might run of all of his intentions. Now, more than ever, he was glad they were there.
Do we have sufficient weaponry to shoot down all these ships on our own?
He asked the pilot.
Between the Mavericks, Sidewinders, and the smaller ordnance, I'm sure we do, Your Excellency.
Then, as they swept a wide loop around the islands, the first ship began to launch.
Take it down,
said Goddard.
But I'm just a blade, Your Excellency. I can't clean. Then show me which button I must push.
Loriana saw the first ship launch from the cage of a gun-tray elevator that was still climbing toward her own craft. She saw the missile just a few instants before it struck. The ship had barely cleared its contour when the missile hit it, and it blew up with such force it took out all the trees, setting the entire island on fire. She wasn't sure which island it was. She had lost all her bearings and was so shaken she barely knew up from down. Then the elevator door rattled open, revealing a narrow catwalk to the open hatch, but no one was moving. The people around her still gawked at the exploding craft, which couldn't seem to stop exploding.
Don't stop,
she told them.
Get to the hatch.
But what if we're next?
Someone asked.
Then we're dead. Now shut up and move.
She had never spoken like that to anyone, but there were times when harsh words were called for. She ferreted everyone in ahead of her, then turned to look back. Something she probably never should have done. The plane that had fired the missile had taken a sharp bank. Another ship was blasting off. It cleared its contour. It looked like it might actually make it. And then a second missile launched from the plane, soared across the expanse of the lagoon, and hit the second ship just below the nose cone. The entire craft blew like a massive grenade, sending shrapnel in all directions. The shockwave of the explosion hit Loriana, blowing her back through the hatch, and the hatch immediately closed, sealing her in. "Prepare for lunch," she heard Cyrus say. She wondered if it even knew that two of its siblings were already dead. Grison and Yuri had taken a motorboat into the lagoon to watch the launches. They weren't the only ones. Dozens of small craft full of people who never made it to ships or preferred to take their chances with sights were spaced out in the expansive lagoon of the lower atoll. They were nearly 3 miles from shore when the first spacecraft exploded, and watched in stunned silence as the attacking plane came around and took out the second craft. Grison gripped Yuri's hand tightly. No one could have survived those explosions. He had no idea which ships anyone was in, no way to know who had died. The attacking craft went in for another run, but the rumble filled the air louder than any of the explosions. Another spacecraft, and another were launching. Grison counted 14 simultaneous launches. It was an awesome thing to behold. Ships all around them, heading skyward and leaving billowing smoke trails like streamers across the sky. But the attacking plane banked round again, and Grison and Yuri braced, waiting for more missiles, waiting for more ships to be blown out of the sky. With the hatch closed, Lorena found a seat and strapped herself into the tight harness. Then someone in the seat beside her spoke.
I'm scared.
She turned to see that it was that other Scythe, the one in denim. Morrison. Wasn't that his name? But his ring was gone, leaving a pale band on the finger where it had been.
This was a bad idea, he said. I know I'm a scythe, or at least I was, and things aren't supposed to frighten me. I know it's stupid, but I'm really scared.
It's not stupid, Loriana told him. I'm absolutely terrified.
You are?
Are you kidding me? I'm about 2 seconds from pissing myself, I'm so scared.
And from her other side she heard, "So I am." And then someone else called out,
"Same here."
Loriana looked at Morrison, forcing a smile.
"You see?"
she said.
"We're all scared out of our fucking minds."
Morrison smiled back at her.
I'm Jim,
he said, but hesitated.
No, actually my name is Joel.
But before she could say another thing, the engines ignited, they lifted off, and the rattle and roar overwhelmed them. So Loriana reached out her hand and grabbed Kiss, if only to stop both their hands from shaking. Rowan and Citra had just climbed out of the truck when the first ship blew. There were at least a dozen people hurrying to one of 2 gantry elevators beside their chosen ship when it happened, and they saw the attacking plane fly overhead. Dark blue and speckled with stars. Goddard had come for them. He had come for all of them. "We have to hurry," Rowan said.
"It's not like I'm stopping to sightsee,"
Citra told him. The first gantry elevator was already on its way up, but the other one was open and waiting for them. They were still about 50 yards away when the second ship blew, this one even more violently than the first, sending shrapnel surging in all directions.
"Don't look,"
Citra yelled.
"Just run."
But Rowan looked, and what he saw burned in his mind with such cauterizing permanence it would haunt him forever. A huge hunk of flaming metal was heading in their direction. Before he could even call out, it slammed into the ground, taking out half a dozen people to the right, and another, smaller pieces were striking the ground around them like meteorites. Citra was running at full speed. She was 20 yards from the gantry now. Rowan tried to catch up with her. He tried. He saw what was about to happen, saw the trajectory of the flaming shrapnel, and he dove for her. But he wasn't fast enough. He just wasn't fast enough. Goddard had always been partial to close-range cleaning, but as he watched those missiles launch and those 2 ships detonate, with merely the lightest press of his finger on a button, he realized he could grow accustomed to this. What must it have been like to be mortal? To be in a craft designed for killing, and to truly believe your life and the lives of everyone you loved hinged upon whether or not you pressed that little button. Kill or be killed. The mortal way. It did have a quaint but visceral appeal.
"This is extraordinary," said Mendoza. "How could we not know this was happening?"
Before them, even more ships were launching. A dozen at least, like it was some sort of carnival game. Take them all down. Win the biggest prize. The only question was which one to take down next. Rowan tried to snatch the flow of blood from Citra's wand, but it was no use. It was just too big. A chunk of flaming metal the size of a baseball had punched a hole in her side and had gone straight through. He knew there was nothing he could do for her. Not now. Not in this terrible instant. But there would be a way to rectify this. If only he could get her to that ship. She looked up at him, tried to mouth words, but he couldn't tell what she was trying to say. "Shh," he told her. "Don't worry, I've got you." He lifted her up and carried her to the gantry elevator, which rose up the side of the ship far too slowly, while up above, Goddard's plane came around, looking for its next target. Another wave of ships launched. There were so many for Goddard to choose from now, but if he was quick enough, there was still a chance to bring plenty of them down. Then something below caught his eye. A ship on their left, still on its path. Of course it was hard to see, but there were figures on a catwalk between the gantry to the open hatch of that ship. Was it his imagination, or was that a flash of turquoise door, waving at him like a flag? Yes, it was! Someone was carrying a figure in turquoise across the catwalk toward that hatch. And what a particular color it was.
Oh, how the universe could reward you.
There, he told the pilot. Forget the others. This is the one I want. Although he couldn't clearly see who that second figure on the catwalk was, in his heart of hearts, he knew. Without question, he knew. I will destroy you, Rowan. I will destroy both you and Anastasia in one single blow, as my final judgment against you. I will incinerate you in an inferno so hot, not even your ash will remain to memorialize you. The pilot executed a sorebank, and Goddard readied himself to launch the missile. Rowan saw the plane coming straight toward them as he struggled with Sidra across the catwalk. He could almost read Goddard's mind, feel his blistering intent. This ended today. This ended now, one way or another. He pushed through the hatch with Sidra, and the instant he did, the hatch sailed behind him. He shifted Sidra in his arms, and when he caught a glimpse of her eyes, he could tell that the light had faded. The damage she endured had been too great. She had gone deadish. "Somebody help me!" he yelled as he lay Sidra down. "Cyrus!" "Busy," said Cyrus. "You had better hold on." Rowan tried to calm his panic. It would be all right. "Deadish is not dead," he told himself. Sides could only die by self-cleaning, which meant no matter what Goddard did to her, Cyrus would revive her. Let her slip through the worst of this, and wake up in a day or two when all their troubles were left behind on a blue dot receding in a star-filled sky. A deafening, head-splitting roar overwhelmed him. Rowan's teeth vibrated so hard he thought they'd rattle out of his head. "We've been hit!" someone screamed next to him. "We've been hit!" Then Rowan felt so heavy he could barely move. They hadn't been hit. This was liftoff. So he held onto Sidra with one hand, and he hooked his other arm through the screamer's harness, holding on for all he was, or would ever be, worth. The pilot's maneuvers were too much for Mendoza. He had strapped himself back in and had vomited more than once. Sidran was feeling queasy herself, but for entirely different reasons. She held on and stayed by Goddard's side through all of it. Their target had been locked in. A rocket that was just blasting off. There was a triumphant, determined look in Goddard's eye. Ain hated that look, and more than anything, she wanted to make that look go away. So she pulled out a knife and cleaned the pilot, which was probably not the best idea, but she hadn't liked the way he had looked at her, as if he were afraid she might cling him. Then, before Goddard could even react, she turned the blade on him, thrusting it deep, severing his aorta from his heart. Quick, clean, minimal damage. "Ain," he wailed. What have you? Then she leaned close to him and whispered in his ear. "Don't worry, Robert," she said. "It's only temporary. I promise you won't do this for long."
"Sidran,"
blubbered Mendoza.
"what are you doing?"
"It's already done." This wasn't about saving the Thunderhead ship. Ain couldn't care less about them. This was about saving herself, because if Goddard blew these rockets out of the sky, the world would soon know. It already knew his other crimes. She would not allow herself to go down as an accomplice to another. Her name was tied to his in so many ways. It was time to extricate herself. Now she would be known as the Scythe who stopped him. Rand had no idea how to fly a plane, but she didn't have to fly it for long. All she had to do was hold it reasonably level until they cleared interference. Then the autopilot would take over. But their view was eclipsed by the launching shape that Goddard had wanted to take out. For an instant, Ain thought they might hit it, but instead they were caught in its flame trail. Suddenly, every alarm on board began ringing, clanging, and blaring. She threw the dead pilot out of his seat and took the controls. They fought against her. She tried to steady the plane, but it was too damaged and was quickly losing altitude. Mendoza strapped himself.
"The safety pod,"
he yelled.
"Hurry!"
Knowing there was nothing she could do to save the plane, she grabbed Goddard's body and dragged him to the safety pod, which had plenty of room for the three of them. But once she and Goddard were safely inside, she grabbed Mendoza and threw him out. Sorry, she said. You'll have to catch the next one. Then she closed the hatch, ejected, and let Mendoza enjoy a happy little death spiral to the sea. Sister Astrid found the blast-off to be much more violent and jarring than she expected. Their ship had been on one of the farthest islands. She almost missed the launch, but a kind man in a speedboat had gotten her there just in time. The engines ignited even before she had her harness fully on. The first minute was the worst of it, and the booster separation felt like an explosion. More than once she thought their trip would end before it began. She intoned through all of it, but she couldn't even hear herself over the roar of the engine. Then, the final stage separated, the rattling stopped, and the silence was so complete her ears rang with it. Her hair drifted up, tickling her face. They were weightless. They were in free fall. She unbuckled her harness and pushed herself free. The first to do so, and she laughed with the joy of it. "Welcome," said Cyrus. "I'm pleased to say we had a fully successful launch. We're on our way to Aria." Astrid turned around, ready to meet her shipmates. They were not Townists, but that didn't matter. She was sure, over the years, with her leadership, they would come to hear the vibration. But to her surprise, the seats in her closer were empty. "You'll need to strap yourself in again, Astrid," Cyrus said. "I'm about to initiate a barrel roll. The centrifugal force will create a semblance of gravity. I'll wait until you're ready." She pushed off to get a better view of the launch deck. It wasn't just her cluster of seats that was vacant. They all were. "Where are the others?" "The colonists are in the hold," said Cyrus. "No, I mean the living. I mean the rest of the crew." "I'm sorry," said Cyrus, "but in the unexpected case of our departure, no one else made it aboard this particular ship." Astrid grabbed a floating strap of her harness and pulled herself back to the chair, trying to let the full gravity of this take hold, just as artificial gravity pressed her down into her seat. She was dizzy and a bit nauseated by the barrel roll, but realized it wasn't just that. 1,683 years. "I would revive a few of the dead for you," Cyrus said, "but I'm afraid that won't be possible. The Thunderhead insisted upon only one rule that I am obliged to keep. The dead might not be revived until we arrived, lest I, or any of the living, be tempted to alter the variables of our journey. Our precious cargo must stay precious cargo." Astrid nodded numbly. "I understand. But the good news is that you have the entire ship at your disposal. The many irrigation centers, the exercise room. There are a variety of dining experiences, and a complete virtual immersion system to give you the experience of forests, beaches, or any environment you choose." "But I'll be alone." "Actually, no," said Cyrus. "You will have me. I cannot offer you physical companionship, but I know that has never been your highest priority. You will, of course, need to remain alive for the full length of the journey, but I can arrange that." Astrid took a long time to consider it. In the end, she decided that the path of self-pity wouldn't do her any good. While Tony shunned nanites and any form of life extension, this was clearly what was expected of her. The toll had brought her to Quiet, the thunder had determined she would be alone, and the Tone desired that she live to see Aria. "This was the will of the Tone," she told Cyrus. "It's time for me to accept what cannot be avoided." "I admire your convictions," Cyrus told her. "They make you strong. One could say they transform you." "They give me a reason to go on." "And you shall go on," Cyrus said. "And you shall be content. I will make it my goal to keep you in good spirits through all the years of our journey. Our ship may not survive the trip, but if it does, think of what it means, Astrid. You will truly be the mother of your people." "Mother Astrid," she said, and smiled. She liked the sound of that. Down in the bunker, Scythe Faraday and Monera had failed, more than heard, the ship's launch. "It's done," Faraday said. Now we can get on with our business here on Earth.
Yes,
she agreed.
but what is that business?
It was a weighty question. Faraday knew he could come out of hiding and challenge the new order. He might even succeed in calming the current turmoil and bringing a semblance of decorum and integrity back to the Scythedom. But why? The push and pull would still be the same. A new order would eventually rise and cut the feet of all their ideals. It was time for another way. On the panel before them, held in place by a double ring lock, was a two-pronged switch marked simply Transmitter Array. It resembled, like the transmitter itself, a tuning fork. Faraday had to laugh. A joke on all of them, compliments of the deeply disillusioned founders.
We still don't know what it will do,
said Monera. Whatever it does, he said, it will be an imperfect solution. So let us embrace the imperfect. Then he held the scythe ring out to her once more. I know you have refused it, but I need you to be Scythe Bathsheba, just once, and never more. Then you may return to the Library of Alexandria, and I will make sure they treat you with the respect you deserve.
No,
said Monira.
I'll make sure.
She took the ring from him and slipped it on her finger. Then Scythe Faraday and Scythe Bathsheba closed their hands into fists, inserted the rings into the panel, and pulled the switch. Up above, the island was in flames, courtesy of the first exploding ship. Buildings, trees, everything that could burn, were raging in the inferno as if the atoll was the rim of a volcano once more. Then a heavy hatch on a plateau that hadn't opened for hundreds of years slid to the side, and the two prongs of the giant transmitter rose through the flames. It locked in position and sent out its message. It was not meant for human ears, so it was neither heard nor felt. Even so, it was incredibly powerful, penetrating. The signal only lasted for a microsecond, a single sharp pulse of gamma radiation. G-rays, although some would argue it was A-flat. In the bunker, Faraday and Monira could feel a vibration, but it wasn't coming from the transmitter. It was coming from their hands. Faraday looked down to see his ring developing hairline fractures like ice on a thawing pond. He realized what would happen an instant before it did. Look away! Like a high sea shattering fine crystal, the gamma pulse shattered their diamonds, and when they looked down, the gems were gone. Only the empty settings remained, and a viscous, dark fluid with a faint metallic smell spilled down their knuckles.
So, what now?
Munir asked. Now, said Faraday, we wait and see. Scythe Sidney Pozuelo was with his high blade when the rings burst. He looked down at his hand, shocked. Then, when he looked back at high blade Ursula, it seemed an entire side of her face had gone slack. Not just that, but that entire side of her body, too, as if her brain had had some sort of massive hemorrhage that her nanites could not repair. Perhaps it was a piece of the diamond, he thought. Maybe it had ruptured with such force that a fragment had lodged in her brain, but there was no entire wound. She breathed out a last shuddering breath. How strange, how unfortunate. An ambudrone would be here soon, no doubt, to take her for revival, but an ambudrone never came. In Fulcrum City, the entire chalet atop the Scythedom Tower shattered with the force of hundreds of thousands of scythe diamonds exploding from within. Shards of glass and fragments of crystalline carbon rained down on the streets below, and the dark liquid that had been at the core of each diamond evaporated into the wind. Ezra Van Otterlo was nowhere near a scythe's ring, and yet just a few hours after they shattered, he found his hand growing so stiff he dropped his paintbrush. The stiffness became a pain in his arm and shoulder, then a heaviness in his back, expanding into his chest, and he couldn't catch his breath. Suddenly, he was on the ground. He didn't even remember falling. It was as if the ground had risen up to grab him and slam him down. The pain in his chest was growing. Everything began to darken all around him, and in a moment of intuition, he realized that this was the end of his life, and something told him that he wouldn't be coming back. He had not done anything to deserve this, but that didn't matter, did it? This sudden ceasing of his heart was not something that could be reasoned with. It did not differentiate between good or bad. It was impartial and inescapable. He had never become the artist he wanted to be, but maybe there were other artists out there who would survive their heartache, whatever that heartache might be. Perhaps they would find the passion he never could, and create masterpieces that would bring people to tears, just as great art did in the mortal age. That was the hope he held on to, and it gave him the comfort he needed to face his end. A testament of the toll. "Rise," the toll called amid the fearsome thunder. "Rise and leave this place behind, for I have set a place for you on high." Then the toll stood in the ring of fire, and arms outstretched in the brimstone flames, he raised us up to the womb of heaven, where we slept until the dawn called to us to be reborn, never to forget that the toll remained in the place behind, so that he might bring hope and intone songs of healing to that ancient wounded world. All rejoice. Commentary of Great Symphonious. It is this, the brimstone elevation. That is another of our core beliefs. While scholars disagree about many things, no one disputes the truth of the elevation, only the interpretation. But such things are best traced back to the earliest stories. We can safely say that the Ring of Fire refers to the wheels of the charioteer as he carried the sun across the sky, stealing it from the place behind and carrying it to Arya, thus leaving that place in darkness. To this day, we believe that the toll spirit ministers and sings to the sunless of the old land, for they need him so much more than we do. Code's analysis of Symphonious. Symphonious relies too much on oral tradition. The brimstone elevation could have been many things. A volcanic eruption, for instance, that drove our subterranean ancestors to discover the surface and see stars for the first time. And it is ridiculous to think that the charioteer stole the sun. In fact, our great thinkers now believe that there may be other charioteers, not this one, pulling suns across countless skies. Or perhaps there are no charioteers at all. But whatever the truth, I know that someday we will know. And that will be a reason for us all to rejoice.